Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod with Allie LeFevere. And her last name is usually pronounced LeFevere, but LeFevere almost means green light. So I prefer it that way. It sounds beautiful. She's co-founder and creative director of Obedient. She does humor branding, and she's also a marketing agency founder as well. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk business and comedy podcasting. She was featured in a bunch of cool magazines like Adweek, New York Times, BuzzFeed, New York Mag, Fast Company, and Rolling Stone. So she's famous. We're going to talk about brainstorming, humor branding, creative agencies, humor marketing, and humor advertising. One of my favorite topics. I've wanted to infuse humor in my stuff since quite a while, but wasn't really successful doing so. So we're going to talk with Ali about that. This pod is presented to you by my podcasting agency. It's called podpire.com. If you want to monetize your podcasting efforts the scalable way, you can go to podpire.com. Ali, that was a long ass intro. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about what you're up to nowadays?
Well, I thought it was beautiful, and if I'm famous, then I am a Z-list celebrity. So, so thank you for hyping me up at the start of this. I appreciate it.
What's your take on fame? Should someone be famous or not?
I think people should have notoriety if they've done something remarkable. I think it's you want good people to be elevated and well known. I think fame for the sake of fame. I don't personally think it's worth pursuing, but that's just my 2 cents. I think if it's driven by ego and it's driven, yeah, for the wrong reasons, I don't think that that's maybe the most viable path forward in life.
Right, because it seems to me that fans create the hype at first. They create a persona, and then you're like, oh, that's what they think of me. Maybe that's what I can be. And then you get lost into that, and then you're not yourself anymore. So lots of famous folks, they find themselves unhappy. What a way to start a pod. Tell me about your shows. You have a bunch of them. They're quite colorful. The names, the branding, I like it really much. Tell me about your pods first.
Yeah. So, okay, we have a few different things going on. So, we have a brainstorming show called Can They Brand That? We started it about 5 years ago. It was just a fun exercise between myself and my business partner. We wanted to push ourselves creatively, have a little fun, and see if we could brainstorm live. Just pick a brand out of a hat, set the timer for 10 to 20 minutes, and just riff as many ideas as we could. Didn't matter if they were good, bad, great, terrible. The whole idea is like, what does a free flowing brainstorm look like? Can we have fun? And then can we just pluck out some of the best nuggets? So we started doing that, and it's actually been one of our best marketing tools and has landed us some of our biggest clients, which has been really rad. So that's one. We had another show, Brandsplaining. It hasn't been active for the last year, so we're reimagining what that looks like. But essentially, that was us talking about branding and not just from a traditional interview style, but how do we gamify it? How do we make it fun and interactive with the founders of really rad brands that we've either worked on ourselves or we just admire from afar. And so there was a comedy bend to that as well. And then we have a third podcast that we've had for the last 8 years that is just completely nothing to do with what we do as an agency. It's called Fangasm. It's a comedy podcast where we read erotic fan fiction. So think Game of Thrones, Marvel, Harry Potter, The Office, Euphoria, you name it. And at one point we were, before all the celebrities kind of came on and jumped into the podcasting game, we were a top 25 comedy podcast for a really long time. It is just a silly, ridiculous project and one of the most fun things I've ever done, and had no idea it would end up to be such an integral part of my life. But it's really great.
Well, I believe that fan-made fiction is a growing category. It's also sort of crowdsourcing. It's like a beautiful model. So why did you get into this in the first place? Like, where was your interest? And I mean, eroticism, it always has
Mhm.
people talking. It's funny also. So why did you
Yeah.
jump into this?
Well, we wanted to start a comedy podcast, and we were just kind of exploring a million different ideas and stumbled across fan fiction. And it is a vibrant, active, live community with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of stories that exist. And we just looked around and no one else was doing it. No one else was reading it, and still really no one else really is in terms of a podcast format. But we thought, "Oh my god, wouldn't it be fun to read this episodically?" So we kind of take a story, break it up into chapters, and we read it on the air across a season. Let's get the author buy-in so they are on board. We're not making fun of their work. We're just teasing the characters in the story. We just knew that there was so much comedy gold in the idea of taking these characters that you know and love and then putting them in scenarios you would never ever actually see them in if you were, exploring the books or the movies or the TV shows that came from. And sex is always just it's a fun topic. It's ripe for humor. The way we approach it, we're very inclusive. It's all encompassing. We are very tolerant. We, in terms of, all preferences, gender identities, orientation, and then let's just like have some fun here. And so, yeah, we knew it was kind of a blue ocean in the podcasting space and just right for humor. So that was like the sweet spot.
Why are you that way? You're like pretty special. You started at McKinsey, so in the corporate world, and then you pivoted all of a sudden to entrepreneurship, and you really got like in your own lane, it seems. Why are you that way?
I think I always wanted to do my own thing. I come from a family of small entrepreneurs. My mom is a hairdresser, owned a salon growing up. I have family members that just kind of own small businesses, and I love the autonomy of that. But I was no one had gone to college in my family, and so going on that more traditional path was something that was always encouraged. And so I went to school, did the college thing, got a degree, came out, and I think my focus was be around smart people and make money. And then I got into that space and realized, "Oh, this isn't fun. It feels like, for me personally, felt a bit like a prison." I didn't feel like I was exercising these other parts of my personality, that I was highly creative and highly strategic, but in, really fun, dynamic ways, and I just didn't feel like I was rewarded in some ways because I think, showing natural leadership and being a self-starter and thinking in ways that maybe are a little bit left from center. But some of the other things I really was drawn to, I didn't get to foster. So my first step away from kind of that corporate path was two people I'd worked with at the consulting firm. They left and they created one of the first subscription box companies in the market. And they knew me to be a writer because I had a kind of an absurd blog back when blogs were popular, like 15 years ago. And so they liked the way I wrote, and I wrote humorous pieces. And so they brought me on to be their VP of engagement, which I had no background, no skill set, no expertise in branding, in marketing, anything that would have kind of fostered a skill set that I could deploy in any meaningful way. But they thought, okay, I like the way she thinks, I like the way she writes. So that was my first foray into branding. And I came on and I helped develop the brand voice and really the whole brand identity, um, with a small team, and then we ended up getting acquired. And then from there, I went on my own, and it gave me the confidence to play in this space that I really, really liked, but I hadn't had a formal training in. And so I was on my own for about a year, and then I formally started Obedient, my current agency, with my best friend who was a copywriter and a comedy writer. And so we, joined forces and we realized, hey, we have an overlapping skill set. We have an incredible relationship. We have a similar desire in terms of a thing we want to do from a career path. And what if we built an entire agency around this idea that fun sells? And it's an incredibly hard to do but effective strategy. And that's how we got where we're at. So, very, a bit meandering, non-traditional, and a bit of just some chances we took, but it's been awesome since the inception.
Yeah, fun slash humor sells, in my opinion, for two main reasons. One, you're being different. Everyone's so serious in business.
Mhm.
And two, it shows your intellect. And intellect is probably the number one buy factor in business. If someone is smart,
Mhm.
then you'll want to have a piece of it. So why am I so serious all the time in business? I think I'm a bit playful on my Twitter, but my brand fucking sucks, you know? Like my multiple companies, they're really serious. They don't go out of the path too much. Like why am I that way? Is it because the market's that way too? And you know, I'm comfortable being where I am.
I think a lot of times people shy away from humor. I think one, because it's hard to do, right? And I think that there is this inherent belief that you can't both be taken seriously as a professional and also delightful and playful and humorous. But my personal opinion is I think the opposite is true. I think it takes laser sharp intellect to have a really strong sense of humor, to be able to read your audience and shape your voice in a way that is both memorable and dynamic and exciting and engaging and also very clear and cohesive and concise. Like I think humor is just, I think the top of the heap in terms of desirable voices. But I think people can be a little afraid because they maybe don't know how to deploy it themselves. They don't really know like what parts of themselves to extract or what things to focus on, or maybe their view of humor is like joke, 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 punchline, 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 and humor is a lot, I think, more thoughtful than that. And then I think it's just, yeah, the preconceived notions about humor being one way. Like humor isn't all like blue humor. It's not just vulgarity. It's not just silly slapstick. It's like there is so much nuance that all evokes different reactions and responses from your audience and reflects different brand parts of your brand identity. And I think it takes a time to figure out what is you. So yeah, I don't know how diagnostic I can be, but those would be kind of my broader guesses as to why maybe you're withholding a little bit.
Give me an idea. It's like, yeah, I want to start like a humor agency. So two questions related to that. Like, were you funny when you started your agency? Is funny even being a thing? I think like just being myself and being odd and recognizing that's enough to make most people laugh because I'm weird as fuck.
Mm.
But did you had that like little demon when you started the agency? Oh, what are they gonna think about me? Oh, what if I send some marketing to a humorist and he thinks I'm not funny? Did you had that when you started?
You know, it's funny. I think most people have like really delightful personalities, right? If you get to know people at kind of their baseline level, they are delightful and charming and warm and kind. And but I don't think everyone's funny. I think there might be people who find people wonderful. But I think humor is, I think it can be honed, but I also think it's a bit of an innate skill set that some people are just born and they're funnier than other people, or they have an ability to perceive the world and spit out a comment or a perspective that is just laser tight and really surprising and really sharp. And so I come from a really funny family, that has always just been like an inherent part of my upbringing. Everyone is a riot, and our particular brand of humor, I am very obviously drawn to. It's my family, I love them, but I think I have always been maybe known to be a funnier person, right? It's like it's not from a I'm not over here like a stand-up comedian telling jokes. Like that is not my style of humor. I don't have that type of desire is, is like that stand-up act, but like I'm a comedic writer. I can write in a lot of different shades and tones and styles and witticism, et cetera. So I think I was always kind of praised for that and was always known for that growing up. And so when I started the agency, I did feel very confident in my writing, both my writing ability and then my ability to leverage humor in a very thoughtful, strategic way, and then to be able to flex into a bunch of different styles. I think I'm pretty well-oiled machine in terms of like my consumption of comedy. Like I like a lot of different comedy. And so I know how to shape a message to resonate with the audience. And but also I've now been doing this professionally for gosh, 12 years. And so I've gotten better over time too. So like how I started early on, I mean, I was very green and I was just going from gut instinct, where now I've been it's been proven that what we do as an agency and what I do as a creative director are effective and resonant. So Yeah, it's like, you get better over time and with feedback and so it's a, it's a innate I think it's an innate skill, but I also think it's one that you hone.
Because there's various styles of humor, and that was my next question, like your humor consumption. For example, I'm listening to Theo Vaughn nowadays. Theo is like sort of on the spectrum, right? Like
Mhm.
ex-drug addict, and
Mhm.
it's you're sort of laughing at the guy and like his quirks. So that's like humans, right? We love to laugh at others, which
Mhm.
is shameful when you think about it. But yeah, that's how we are. Or we laugh sometimes to comfort ourselves, oh, we're better than this other person, or it's just a situation that we were past ashamed of, but now we realize that somebody put it to the light of day. So what are different styles of humors, and which one do you use in the business world for your clients?
Oh, we use kind of all of them. I would say the ones we don't we are le we first of all, I would say that we don't punch down. So, I personally don't find things particularly humorous when there are, uh, innate power dynamics, right? So it's like punching down and making fun of someone who is struggling or in pain. I just don't find that funny. I feel like that is more someone else's cross to bear, and I think that, like, it's 'cause I think all good humor requires empathy and truth, right? But I think, like, there are just a million and that's more of, like, a human level rather than from branding. But I think that we deploy kind of every shade and style of humor you can kind of imagine. So we have a current client right now who we do a lot of, polarizing humor. It can be very blue at times, which, I don't want to say vulgar because we're not overly vulgar as an agency, but we can be a little cheeky and we'll write some things that are have a little bit more shock value to them. Um really playful and zany and offbeat and kind of silly and just like that real playful humor,
Like
clever and witticism.
memes are quite
Yeah, like
popular.
just offbeat, clever and witticisms, really dry, straightforward tone. I mean, there's just juxtaposition. There's just so much you can do. It's like it's all different, but I think it really all boils down to what is both surprising and delightful. And so delightful is like, "Oh, wow, that really hit me." And then surprising is like, "I did not expect that," which is I think the mix you need for a line of copy to land. Um, and it can't be oversaturated. Like everything you do cannot be funny. G- good humor is also has breathing space around it. So if everything is a punchline, then it's also nothing's funny. So there's an art to it for sure.
The bigger the company, the more corporate they are, the less
Mhm.
risks they're gonna take, the more Mrs. and Mr. Smith they will be, like a common audience, you know.
Mhm.
So do you often work with these companies? Because I checked your portfolio, you have some pretty big brands in there. And second question, adding to that, is how do you make sure that you're not boring, but how do you make sure you don't cross the line into like hurting people? Because I think you sort of answered that the last question, like you don't
Mhm.
really try to go there. I feel in your case, it's like more risking to be boring, but maybe like their customers are just boring and like that type of humor. Like how do you go with that?
Well, I mean, the good news is I think when people come to us, they know that we are not traditional in the sense that we are not just our approach to branding and marketing, right? So, I mean, and we even say that, and I say that upfront in the sales process. It's like, here is how we approach branding and marketing and advertising. If you don't want that, then we're not the right agency because we're just going to be a waste of time. You can find a lot of people who can write things that are very boring and expected, and you're just trying to churn content. Like we don't see ourselves as a content agency. Like we are a branding agency. Like we're really trying to build a foundational voice and all the various and play in a really memorable way in the various mediums that brands leverage. So So I think that, but to answer your question, the bigger that a company is, it's often a bit of an uphill battle, right? So we've done work with a couple brands, or one brand in particular, we still do work with, for a lot of their our take on humor for them is it's playful and cheeky, but it wouldn't be like laugh out loud, because that is like, we're really pushing the envelope for them as a brand, even though it's not pushing the envelope for us as an agency. But that same brand, that same big corporate brand, allows us to go kind of ham in some of their campaigns. So they want to keep their foundational brand a little tighter, but they want to have fun and truly play and get really wacky and creative with some of these, product drops or big ad campaigns or holiday releases and things like that. So yeah, I think for us is like, we're always trying to push them in the direction of like, knowing that, like, building enough trust with them to say, like, this again, this is all well thought out. It's with your audience in mind. It's to convey a specific message. It's an understanding of your landscape. Like, here, like, you can say this, boring, forgettable, not memorable, something your competitors are saying, or you could say it this way: dynamic, exciting, fun, surprising, delightful, your customers will remember, right? So it's that dance that we're always trying to do. But yeah, we have way more fun with smaller startups just because they they wanna get themselves on the map, and they need to build a brand that people care about. So, that's what we're doing.
I'm looking at some of your work here, for example, for Water Boy. So water
Mhm.
boys and girls are quenched and drenched. We're a sight for sore tides. So lots of alliterations there. Like, what's your, and it's cool, it's catchy. What's your process to come up with that copy? How do you discover the client? Is there brainstorming between you and the clients, you and your partners? How do you go with coming up with these great headlines?
Yeah, I mean, well, we have a really pretty intensive discovery process in terms of really trying to understand the brand, but not just the brand in terms of what do they do, what do they offer. We're trying to understand the brand as it relates to the audience, right? Like, who who is purchasing your product? What do they care about? What matters to them? What are they sick of? What needs do they need to have met? What are things they're sick of being told? Like, we're really trying to understand the audience, because ultimately we're building a brand and a voice to resonate with them. So we care, we obviously care what the founder thinks, but it's like, ultimately, what's interesting to them is way less interesting to us than what's interesting to their consumer. So we're really trying to understand the audience, the competitive landscape, like, what is everyone else saying? And then what are we're building out a message hierarchy or a language hierarchy. It's like, what are the top line ideas we want to convey? What are some Okay, so once they get through that barrier, what are the other 2 to 3 things they need to know about your brand? And then how do we say those things in a way that is both clear and conveys maybe a benefit or a feature, and then is also entertaining? So then we're taking kind of those core ideas that are stripped of any personality, and we're going, how do we say this thing in a way that is drenched in personality? And then how do we say all these things in a way that is cohesive, so the voice seems consistent, right? And we could play a little bit in different tactics, but yeah, so it's a building process. You have to understand the brand and the audience and the landscape, and then you can start to pluck out the most essential elements, and then that's when you start to actually build out that voice and develop those branded pieces in a way that feels, again, cohesive.
Tons of value today. Where can people find out more about you, Ali?
Yeah, you can find more about me at obedientagency.com, obedientagency.com, and then Obedient Agency across social. And then me personally, Allie LeFevere on social.